Hi, my name's Sian Lewis. I'm 22 and I'm bilingual English-Spanish and I speak proficient Italian. Hola, me llamo Sian, tengo 22 años y hablo inglés, español y italiano. Okay, that felt really weird.
My name is Damian Fantato. I'm 21 and I speak Italian and English. Mi chiamo Damian Fantato, ho 21 anni e parlo inglese e italiano.
Hi, my name is Daf Pritchard and I'm bilingual in English and Welsh. Hello, fe enw yw Daf Pritchard a dwi'n ddwyieithog yn y Gymraeg a'r Saesneg.
I'm Kate Thomas, I'm 21 years old and I'm bilingual in English and in French. Salut, je m'appelle Kate, j'ai 21 ans et je suis bilingue en français et en anglais.
That's a really interesting question. People always say, do you dream in one or the other? But I actually think that unless I'm replaying a conversation in my head with somebody who is speaking English or somebody who is speaking Spanish, I don't think I actually form words in my head. I think I just think without language, and then unless it's actually going to be about a conversation, I don't actually put it into words.
A bit of both. When I'm speaking in English, it's usually in English. When I'm speaking predominantly in Italian, it's usually in Italian. But it's hard to have a hard and fast rule.
I think it's a combination really. I think generally when I'm surrounded by more English-speaking people, and especially when I was at university at Leeds, the majority of the time I'd be thinking and dreaming in English. But then when I'm at home, when I'm living with my parents, who I speak Welsh with, or I'm generally hanging around with Welsh-speaking friends, then a lot more Welsh comes into it. I'd say it's a hybrid, but generally slightly more English.
Usually in English, I'd say mostly in English, because I've always kind of spoken English at home with my parents, and so that was the language I was taught first, and I think it's kind of naturally kind of turned out like that.
I think it's funny, I have to count in English. English is my mother tongue and I really can't count in Spanish. I mean, I can if I have to, but I don't feel comfortable.
Well, sort of technological things.
There are some English phrases, especially sort of technological speak, that don't lend so well to Welsh. So, a word like blog is not really a Welsh term or text, so you end up borrowing English phrases in Welsh as well.
If you want to have an argument, Spanish is really good because it's just a lot more fiery than English, so I like using Spanish for arguments.
There are some phrases that don't translate so well from Welsh to English. There's a phrase for when it's raining really heavily. It's difficult to do so in English without resorting to swearing, whereas in Welsh there's a phrase called Brwhyn Ragedd-a-Ffyn, which means it's raining old women and sticks. And
Well, it's a bit useless trying to chat to someone up in Italian if they don't speak it.
I think it depends entirely on whether the object of your attraction is English or Spanish.
Probably English, because I haven't had a French boyfriend since I was about 15, but in that case it was definitely French. But I do think that French is probably a more romantic language in general.
even when I've dated girls who've spoken Welsh, we've tended to speak English together on a conversational level. If we're writing letters or sending each other text, the address and the sign-off will usually be in Welsh. So little intimate niceties can sometimes be in Welsh, but on the whole I've found that English has taken over.
Italian's a good language for chatting people up, I find. English, predominantly.
If I was allowed, I'd like to use a bit of both, because overall, no, not allowed. Okay.
mainly because I think my English is slightly better, so I could probably get the nuances, which sounds slightly pretentious.
I have to say English just because I do read books in Spanish, but I tend to read literature in English because so many great books are written in English. There's a few good Spanish authors, but there's not as many.
If I had to choose one, it would probably have to be English, although I speak a lot of Welsh. I don't write in Welsh as often as I did. I'll go for some weeks, sometimes months without writing in Welsh. And as a result, because about 90% of my writing ever has been in English, I just find that I'm just a lot more comfortable with it in terms of my vocabulary is a lot wider when it comes to English.
I don't know. I think English, but I might kind of incorporate a bit of French to make it more interesting and to make more people want to read it.
Why did you choose English?
Just because that's the language I'm used to writing in the most. I think I've always kind of written in a diary in English and kind of saved French for my schoolwork when I was younger. And I haven't written in French for about 3 years other than kind of letters or standard kind of things like that. So yeah, English, I think.
Funnily enough, there are a number of things, like swimming. I learned how to swim in England, but I never sort of really used it. So when I started swimming, so I did most of my swimming in Italy. So I think of the sort of the things, what are they called? The actions, the methods of propelling yourself forward. This is the problem. This is the problem. I don't know. Yeah. So I think of the strokes in Italian.
Definitely driving, because I learned to drive when I was in France, and I've tried driving in the UK and accidentally turned the corner at a quiet junction, gone on the wrong side of the road, that kind of thing. It's not very good, but yeah, definitely driving. It's just kind of ingrained into me to be on the right-hand side of the road. And
that's interesting. Well, in terms of physical activities, maybe you could talk about sport, maybe rugby, because I've only played it at school. I'd be more used to talking about it in Welsh, so that feels quite natural. Driving, I was taught in English, and it would just feel a little false if I was taught in Welsh. It would feel like a sort of quite a sort of embarrassing Welsh lesson.
Drive. I can only drive in Spanish because I don't know any other words. If you got in a car with me in England, you were like, press the, I don't know, do something to the gear. I'd be like, what's gear? Well, I know. But I really don't know all the words, whereas I know them in Spanish because that's where I learned to drive.
Would singing count? Depending on the singing. If it was a more sort of choral style, maybe I'd feel more comfortable in Welsh. Not in a choir now, but I did a bit at school, and then we were taught there. But then if it was more sort of karaoke and popular music, then probably be in English, because Welsh language pop is hit and miss, to say the least.
Running as well, because in my school when I was in France, they it's something they kind of really push with kids, and from the age of about 10 to 18 I was forced to do kind of long distance running, and every time you ran past the teacher she'd shout at you, keep going, that kind of thing. So I've kind of got it in my head now to count in French and to kind of keep encouraging myself in French.